Okay, and this is Tuesday, October 6th, 2020, and this is Logic Pro class. And today our topic is complex notational situations that can be addressed with tuplets. So as you know, a triplet is a special case of one kind of tuplet, but it certainly is not the only kind of tuplet. And by the way, there are some videos, as I hope you are aware, in the class playlist on YouTube about tuplets. There's at least two about tuplets, and there's also one about triplets just in general. So it's worth looking at all of those, and I hope you already have. This will mean more to you if you have. So in any case, this is what your assignment looks like for this due next Tuesday, and here's what it sounds like. And I don't know what that little bug was about the screen not updating there to show you where the playhead was. That was very strange. That's a little bug that has shown up in 10.5 and later, and I'm wondering when they're going to get it fixed. So sometimes all you can do is just stop and start again. Okay, so what this contains is tuplets with different motivations. So here's a tuplet whose motivation is to produce that grace note pattern. Here's a tuplet that allows both quarter notes and pairs of eighth notes to exist inside the quarter note tuplet. And here's a tuplet that is an odd tuplet, and to make it extra complicated, it begins with a tied note. And finally, here's a tuplet that allows the display of 30-second notes, even though the display quantization is 1624, which normally would not show 30-second notes. And you'll notice that those tuplets that have a number in parenthesis are tuplets where the number of the tuplet will not print. So when I go now to show this in page preview here, and I'll make it a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. You can see that, for example, this little 2 is not printing here because it is a tuplet with the number hidden. And you will see that this number 3 for this eighth note triplet, and I know that doesn't look anything like an eighth note triplet, but that's what it is. Also, it does not print. It's in parenthesis. So the tuplets that do print their number are this one with a bracket and this one without a bracket. So what we're going to be doing now is just going over the creation of those, and I really hope you watch the videos. It'll help you a lot, and I do hope you ask questions as we go through here. So I'm going to now go back to the logic file and back to the track window, and I'm going to delete all that. And I'm going to just save this. And this is going to go into our common file stream. And this is week 1, class 1 examples. So this file will now be in the common file stream as we make it. Okay. So to begin with, I'm just going to make a nice blank region. You know how I like to work. I'd way rather make blank regions and play into them in the score window than just play blind into the track in the main window or the arrange window. And just because it's a good idea, I'm going to delete this double bar that we don't need now. And you all wrote your weekly email to Apple telling them to remove this automatic zoom feature, right? Tell me that you did. Make me feel good. Okay. Didn't I just delete that? What did I miss? Try again. Okay, it's gone. Life is grand. Okay, and so to start with, let's learn how to create an appearance of two grace notes following a quarter note. So here we go. Oops. Okay, so the reason why, by the way, the score went away when I hit stop was because I was in individual region view. And you can tell you're in that when you click on a staff and it does not highlight. That means you're in individual region view. So one click upwards on this little up arrow takes you up one level of organization. It's actually called level up. Sounds like a video game. I know, it's not. And so now you can see that when I select the region, it looks selected. And had I been in this viewing mode when I played, the score window would not have gone away as soon as I hit stop on my recording. Okay, so I don't know how close my performance was, but my general goal there was to play this note, and then for these to be the last two 16th triplets of this beat, of beat 2. And then for this to be the downbeat of, or not the downbeat, but the beginning of beat 3. And just to see how close I might have gotten here, I'm going to choose 8:24. Let's see if that'll show it. No, it's even worse. 32:24. No. So are you kind of catching on? 32:48. There just is no way that I can get that tuplet to appear without manually editing it in. So now I'm going to do that. I'm going to get the N. And if the N tuplet tool, or I'm not sure what to call it, part box item, is not showing up, you have to keep clicking the notes here. If you've turned on all these different part box items and you're in different places in the part box, you have to keep clicking the note part box item until it's up at the top, and then you can get the N tuplet. Okay, so if you can't find it, that's how you find it. And I'm going to place it on that C. And I'm going to say, give me 3 notes in the space of 2 eighth notes. And if I do that, and I don't do anything else, here's what happened now. Clearly, this is not what I want to see. So now I'm going back to the number 3 here and double clicking it to open the tuplet back up. And I'm going to do some things. I'm going to hide the bracket. I'm going to hide the numbers. I'm going to allow double values. That will allow this to get displayed as a quarter note. And I'm going to allow half values. And that will allow these 2 notes that are shorter to get displayed as 2/16ths, I hope, if they're close enough. If they are not close enough, then I'll actually quantize them to the nearest 16th triplet, and we'll be done with that. Apparently they weren't close enough, so now I'm going to take these 2 notes and get the quantize tool out here, and click and hold and quantize to the nearest 16th triplet. Maybe that'll get me there. And as you can see, my performance just wasn't good enough. I just didn't make it happen. So there's a couple of solutions we have here. One of them is to just play it again. And honestly, that's usually what I do. I just play it again. It's easier for me than messing around with editing it in some perfect way. However, if you are a person who just likes to do step time, or just prefers to do it, or just wants to mouse things in, you can do that too. I'm just going to play it again. So, and that will give you a chance to see the whole process anyway. So here we go, one more time. And I have a way now of making sure that I got close enough. I'm just going to go ahead and quantize it to start with. And to start with, I'm going to quantize to the nearest just eighth note. But then I'm going to select these 2 notes and quantize them to the nearest 16th triplet. And that makes sure that these notes and these notes were exactly where they should be if my performance wasn't perfect. And now I'm going to play it and make sure it sounds the way I want it to sound. that's probably pretty close to what we're looking for. I think I just played them too short before. So now I'm going to go through the process again. So here's the N tuplet, put on the C, and notice it's remembering the last setup, but if it didn't remember the last time I used it, I would still be saying I want to see 3 notes in the space of 2/8 notes, hide the bracket, hide the numbers, allow double values, and allow half values. Excuse me. And okay. Okay, that's what we were hoping to see. And now to make it look like grace notes, I'm going to now get the resize tool, which is this one. And I'm going to select these 2 notes and drag down to -5. See that? And I'd like that stem to be a little shorter. So this is option D, which moves the ends of stems down. So that's here under note attributes, stems. You can see stem end move up is option shift D. Stem end move down is option D. You can do it from the menu here if you want, but it's pretty slow. And if I just really deeply feel like I must see the little slash that makes it super clear that it's a grace note, although in fact you often see grace notes without the slash. But if you just desperately have to have the slash, here's what you must do. You go and click the part box button right here that brings up line type things and get the diagonal line. And now enter the diagonal, and I'm just going to drag that into it down a little bit, and maybe I'll just nudge the whole thing down a little, and there we go, we have a grace note. So this is the only process I've been able to find that allows you to notate something that looks like beamed grace notes. These are not actual grace notes, of course, in Logic's implementation of it, meaning that I did not select them and go to the functions menu and go to independent and say independent grace. In other words, I didn't select them and press option G and make actual Logic style grace notes out of them. They actually are simply reduced in size notes that are part of a tuplet. Okay? So if you need to do that, it's an option. Now, here's something that's a little bit trickier, and this is a situation where you're trying to do an 8th note followed by 2 grace notes. And I'm not going to try to make you do that for an assignment, but I do want to try to make it happen here, just to show you the drill, what the process would be. And this one I am going to step in because I'm just not that good. Kind of pull the step time window up here. Step input. There we go. Let me make sure that I'm back on the... Make sure I'm on the downbeat of bar 4 here. Okay, good. And I'm going to play at this moment. This is going to seem strange, but I'm going to choose 30-second note triplets. And this is going to seem like a strange little process to you, but here we go. And I'm just going to put it up an octave just for laughs. So here I go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Did I really hit that second one? I didn't really mean to, but I guess I hit it. Okay, now I'm going to double click here, and I'm going to say show me 3 notes in the space of 2/16 instead of in the space of 2/8. And if it didn't come up showing that way, I would put it here. So show me 3 notes in the space of 2/16. And hide the bracket, hide the numbers, allow double values, allow half values. And now delete all those, select this, and do Shift L. See how that worked? And how easy it was to conceive of that way? And now what I need to do is unbeam these 2 notes. So I'm going to unbeam them. So that's going to be Shift B. And now these, I'm going to get the resize tool wherever it is. There it is. and just bring them down -5. Oops, too far. -5. There we go. And finally, and this is something to remember about grace notes. Grace notes are almost always upward stems. Not absolutely always, but they are mostly upward stems. And I want to lower the end of that stem a little bit, so option D. There we go. So now I've got an eighth note followed by what appears to be a couple of grace notes heading into the and of one. Okay, so this is not a very common situation. You don't normally see music that's got two grace notes between eighth notes, but it could be done this way. Okay? So this situation is a little more common. It does happen some. And now let me show you the alternative just to be sure that you understand. So I'm going to delete that. And not only that, but I'm going to come here and delete that tuplet. And I'm going to select both of those notes and reset all their attributes. So now they're just normal looking notes. But I'm going to get rid of that thing. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to select them both and do option G. So what option G does is it turns the notes into, quote, independent grace notes. But they are now independent. That means they literally do not know about each other and have no relationship to each other. So now I have to use the layout tool to pull that half note over a little. And now I'm going to pull that over a little. And now I have a couple of grace notes done that way. And of course in page view, they would actually have a little more space. Even if I was doing 4 bars per line, I'm going to move that up. Even if I was doing 4 bars per line, they'd have a little more space. If you would prefer not to have these little ties showing here, you can just select them both, go to Functions, Note Attributes, Ties, and say Hide. And now you can get them a little bit closer together with the Layout tool. And there we go. So that appearance is also clear to any musician. Anybody who reads music knows this is 2 grace notes and knows what to do. The only problem with it, of course, is that if you are working with somebody who just insists that the grace notes be beamed, then you need to do it the other way that I just showed you. So questions about that? Either of these processes so far?
So it's just different appearance, like the tie, the beaming things, that's it, right? For the grace note?
Correct. And it's going to sound the same either way. It's just got the same sound. It's just a 16th triplet. And of course, this is quite a slow tempo I'm at right now. I'm at a tempo of 80. So at a tempo of 120, let's say, those grace notes are going to sound faster just because they are, well, that's funny. They are 16th triplets at the end of the day. Okay, so if there are no more questions about that, we're moving on to other aspects of tuplets. So I'm going to undo a couple of notches here to get back to the way it was so that you have that as an example that you can inspect and look at and see one that's working in a logic file so that you know how to imitate it when you're doing another project or assignment. And I'm going to get out of page view now. Back to this view. And now let's talk about a tuplet that begins with a rest. So here we go. Here's how that might need to happen. Not quite good. That's pretty close. Okay. So if I wanted this to be a 5 tuplet, I could certainly do that. And so what I would do, and of course this is not quantized right now, so I would click the little note button here and get the end tuplet. And now I'm going to put that on that first note with the pencil tool. Notice, by the way, that I'm not clicking directly on the note. Notice that I am kind of hovering around the note until it gets identified and then releasing the mouse. And in this case, we don't need any of this stuff necessarily, but what we do want is 5 notes in the space of 4/16. So that's the appearance we're going to get. And if we'd like to not have the bracket but just the number because they're all beamed, we could certainly do that. and my performance apparently wasn't quite good enough. So this is going to seem interesting to you, I hope. I'm just going to select these two notes and go into the event list and just drag them a little bit. Oh, they got quantized. That's why. My performance might have been fine, but I had automatic quantization turned on, which I didn't quite realize. That would be why my other example didn't work. Ha ha. So when you're trying to play in wild tuplets like I was, be sure you don't have automatic quantization turned on. I must have had it turned on. I'm going to look back in this window. Sure enough, when I have no region selected, I have 16th note quantization turned on. So that's why my live performance of the 16th triplets was getting stepped on and required me to do that manual quantization, because I was getting an automatic quantization that I was not aware of at the time. Okay, enough of that. So we're back to this. And so to start with, this might have worked. I'm just going to unquantize these. So there's a key command for not quantizing or unquantizing. It's right there, undo quantization, and it's Shift Q. So you gotta just select the notes and press Shift Q if you think you played them close enough, or you can come up here to the menu and do it that way. And Shazam, my performance wasn't as bad as it looked like at first. How about that? So now I have a pentuplet or 5-tuplet. And if I wanted to have the bracket, certainly I can double click the number to get into the tuplet dialog box and get the bracket back. So that's sort of your choice. You need the bracket if you are going to put the number on the note head side. Then you need the bracket. If you're going to put the number on the beam side, you really don't need the bracket. Okay? All right. So that's all lovely, but now what if I want to have a pentuplet that begins with a rest? So a word from me to you, it is probably easier for you to play the note instead of a rest. Play some note, even if it's a note you're going to delete, and then delete it. So I'm going to select it and delete it. But now I have this weird look. And you may think, and I wish it was true, that you could double click this bracket and this tuplet bracket and edit the tuplet. But the problem is that there is no piece of data here on the downbeat to hang a tuplet bracket to. And so just so you can see what will happen if you forget this, I'm going to say, okay, give me 5 notes in the space of 4/16 notes. And look what garbage it did. And notice that it attempted to hang that bracket on the first note, because there just is no data here to hang that tuplet bracket on. So now I'm going to double click that and delete it. And it turns out to be very simple. Just put a rest there. So I'm clicking the rest part box button here. And now I'm going to get a 16th rest and just put it on the downbeat. Okay, now that I have it on the downbeat, I have 2 choices. One is I can go here in the part box and get the end tuplet visible to me. And then I can actually hang it directly off the rest, like that. And again, notice that I click outside the rest and drag it to the rest. I don't try to option click right on the rest, because that's the pencil tool. And who knows what it might do. So I'm just putting it up here and hanging it on the rest. So you could do that. But turns out, since there's already a tuplet bracket showing, that's not necessary in this case. I can just double click here and edit what's already there now, which is again connected to that rest that we put in, the user rest. So now I can say, give me 5 notes in the space of 4/16. And I don't want to hide the bracket this time, because the bracket needs to include the rest. And Shazam, I have a tuplet that begins with a rest. Okay? Is that making sense to you? Questions about how that happened?
So just making sure you're kind of instead of like selecting what you did before was select the first note and then edit it from there, and that's when you got all the janky stuff. And then when you selected the first rest and then edit it from there, that's when it got the rest. And then I don't know if that
Yes.
made sense. Sorry.
Yeah. In other words, the tuplet has to have an event at the moment where the tuplet is supposed to begin to connect itself to. The tuplet can't connect itself to nothing. And I know that these rests that appear in logic look like they're not nothing, but they are literally nothing. They are not data. There is no event in the event list for this rest on the downbeat of bar 2. Do you see that? There's nothing there on the downbeat of bar 2. This rest is just logic's automatic rests trying to make sense of your music. And in fact, as you know, if you go to the staff style, you can simply turn off automatic rests and they're like gone. Notice the only rest left is the user rest that I put in. So the point here is that automatic rests are not data and you cannot hang a tuplet on one. So you have to put in a user rest, and now you actually have some data. So that rest is in fact a piece of data in the event list. Here it is. And here's the very weird thing, and I don't understand how this is, but for some reason Logic has decided that all rests are D-sharp 3. How they know they're rests, I don't know. How does it know it's a rest? I don't have any idea. but it does somehow know that it's a rest. And here's the funny thing, the velocity of a user rest is the vertical display position. Are you seeing that? As I change the velocity in the menu here, it's the vertical display position. And finally, of course, the length of the rest is determined consistent with other aspects of interpretation. The length of the rest is managed the same way the lengths of notes are managed. If I had put in a 16th note, it would also be reading 0, 0, 0, 232 here. For 0 bars, 0 beats, 0 sixteenths, and 232 ticks. Okay, so now that we know, excuse me, now that we know that we can hang a tuplet off a rest, that means that, and I'm just going to copy this over here now, so copy, and I'm going to put it here. That means that there are some other things that might be possible, and here's one. I'm going to put a half note on beat 3 of this bar. So you see where it's going to go, bar 5, beat 3. What if I'd like it to be tied across to here? So that the appearance then will be of a pentuplet that begins with a tied note. Turns out to be very doable. Select this note and that note. Press Shift L. And frequently that's all you have to do. Because what that did is it made this note last to that one. If that didn't produce that automatic effect that we just saw, then the next thing you would do is select this note and turn off interpretation. And you do that up in the functions menu. Don't do it over here. This turns off interpretation for the entire region, right? So if we want to just turn interpretation off for that one note, we go up here to functions, note attributes, interpretation, and as you can see, defeating interpretation is Shift I, forcing interpretation is I. A little joke that I make sometimes is that if logic had been written by an American instead of by a German, instead of saying force and defeat, it would say on and off. But for some reason it says force and defeat. So make of that what as you will. I think that may be because the German national hero is a guy from the 19th century named Otto von Bismarck, who unified all the various German sub-political units into one nation. Whereas, of course, as we all know, the American national hero is Thomas Edison, who invented the light bulb and the light switch, on and off. So there you go. So you'll see force and defeat all through logic. And they also seem to be consumed with whose fault it is. So we constantly see default instead of something like normal or some other kind of word that would be used if this was an American product. But there you go. Apple bought it, and they have still kept a lot of its German roots. So there you go. Okay, so if you then in turn turn off interpretation with Shift I, that will force a note length to display that otherwise might be getting hidden because Logic's interpretation function is trying to make the music more readable. Finally, here's an ugly thing that can occasionally happen. You have turned off interpretation. You know the note length is right because you selected this note and the note you want to follow, and you pressed Shift L. And then that didn't work. You still had a rest showing. In this case, it worked, but it doesn't always. It depends on the local details. So you still have a rest showing. So then you select this note and you press Shift I to turn off interpretation. And you still have a rest showing. You are not without recourse, and here's the recourse. I'm going to Option double click this note so that I'm in the event list. And what you do is, with that note length in view, just start increasing the length here. See where I am? Just start increasing the length there until finally it pops and starts to display as the tied note that you want. Okay? So you won't have to go far, but you may have to just increase its length some, even beyond what Shift L would do. Literally make this note overlap that one a little bit in length. It'll end up not mattering, but that may be what you have to do on rare occasions. But mostly Shift L does the job, and if it doesn't, mostly then Shift I does the job. So that's how to make that happen. And you may recall that that's one of the things you're going to be doing on your assignment. So now you know how to start a tuplet with a rest, and you also know how to get a tuplet to start with a tied note by, in essence, having the rest be at the same time as the last tied note of a tied group, and then having the tuplet tied to that rest. Okay? Now let's have some fun with some other items here. So I'm going to play in, first I'm going to just turn off automatic quantization. That's bugging me right now, so I just turned it off. I leave it on a lot of the time, but it's not convenient to leave it on when you're playing in all these things with odd tuplets. Of course, the truth is you can leave it on and then just defeat quantization locally. In fact, just to show you how that works, I'm going to do that instead of turning it off. So here we go. What in the world just happened to the tempo? Did you hear that? The click started and then died? I think I know why. It's because when I was beginning this little ditty, remember I did it from the piano part that we were looking at? And it has a tempo track. Yes. So that's what just happened. So I'm going to select all that and delete. Well, that was funny. I guess it averaged them all. I'm just going to make the tempo be 80. Okay, and we're done with that. And I don't know if you want to see that window. Let's go to this one. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now I'm going to select these notes and do Shift Q. And what Shift Q did is unquantize them. Now, I happen to know that what I was trying to play was a quarter note triplet where the last quarter note was in fact 2 eighth notes. It turns out when you do that those notes all land on eighth note triplet boundaries. So if I wanted to actually quantize this, I would quantize it to eighth note triplets. Since every quarter note triplet lands on some eighth note triplet boundary, and since those last 2 eighth notes that replace the last quarter note of the quarter note triplet also boil down to eighth note triplets, I could just quantize the whole thing to eighth note triplets. But I'm just going to see how it comes out the way I played it. So here's the workflow. I'm just going to, since I already have a tuplet and it's connected to a real piece of data, I'm just going to double click it. And I'm going to say, give me 3 notes in the space of 2 quarter notes, but allow half values. And there we go. Pretty easy, huh? And if you were wanting to, you could change the order here. So here, let's try that. I didn't even play it. Try again. I'm not doing very good, I can tell that. So I'm just going to select all this and quantize it to the nearest eighth note triplet. Let's see how that did. Oops. That's what I want. Now, here's the interesting thing about this pattern. There are two ways it could be shown. Here's one. I'm going to get the end tuplet, and I'm going to drop it on this first note and say give me 3 notes in the space of 2/8 notes, but allow double values. And I have that. And now I'm going to put an end tuplet there, give me 3 notes in the space of 2/8 notes, and also allow double values. Now, I guess my performance wasn't quite there. Didn't I I put it on the wrong note. Look at that. I tied my tuplet bracket to the F instead of the E. Do you see what happens when you miss? So I'm going to double click here and delete. By the way, you can't just delete the tuplet bracket because you can't select it. Do you see that? You have to double click it to open it and then hit delete. Cancel doesn't delete it. It just cancels your edit. So you have to delete it that way to get rid of it. And I'm going to try again. There we go. Got it in the right place this time. And now 3 notes in the space of 2/8 notes allow double values. There we go. That's what I was hoping to see. So that's one way that could be shown. And there's another way, however, so I'm going to copy that and just put it over here. And I'm going to delete this tuplet. So delete. And I'm going to edit this one. Instead, now it's going to be 3 notes in the space of 2 quarter notes. There we go. 3 notes in the space of 2 quarter notes. But now I'm going to allow half values. Look what it's done. So these really are the same rhythmic notation in the sense of they both show with perfect accuracy where the notes begin, but they don't necessarily show how the notes feel. So if you notate it this way, probably the performer puts a little more emphasis on this note and that note. And you get 2, 3, 4, da, 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 da. See what that is? But if you do it this way, the performer probably puts a little more emphasis on this note, and that note. So then you get 2, 3, 4, da. I can't even feel it here. 2, 3, 4, da, 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 da. There we go. Okay. So that way you're kind of feeling the quarter note triplet more. And this is just sort of a connecting note between locations of the quarter note triplet. So which of these you choose is just going to depend on how you want the performance to feel. And that's that. Okay, moving along. Let me look at my list of things I need to do here. We've covered tuplets that begin with tied notes, tuplets that begin with rests, tuplets with half and double values for some notes, tuplets to display beamed grace notes, and oh yes, how about tuplets for displaying note values the current score quantization doesn't support? So let's do that. And I want to do 2 examples of this. Actually, I just want to direct your attention to a video that already exists in the YouTube playlist. It's the one on playing in swing fields. I think the one on playing in swing fields has some information about this as well. But just for a moment, just to do it, I'm going to set up an automatic quantization of 8th triplets. So that's now my automatic quantization for any new notes that I play. Notice that has no effect on anything I already played. It only affects new notes that I play. When you don't have a region selected and you set the quantization over here, you're only affecting future material that you're going to play. When you have a region selected and you set the quantization, you're only affecting past material that's already in the region. But even though I select this region and I quantize it, it still has no bearing whatsoever on any new material I add to the region. So when a region is selected, you're quantizing the past. When a region is not selected, you're quantizing the future. Are we good? Okay. So now I'm going to play a little swing music. So this is going to be brilliant swing too, let me tell you. Okay. So, see how it looks right now? Take a good look at it for a moment. So notice we have dotted 8/16 going. We have an eighth note triplet, because even though the automatic quantization is going to turn all these into eighth triplet values, but you're not going to see eighth triplets when I hit stop. So I just wanted you to be aware of that. Okay, so stop. And you see that the only eighth triplet we see is here where I played one, and here where I didn't. I actually played 4/16 there, didn't I? So let's hear that play back, just to understand. So you remember those 4/16 I played there? Just got stepped on. So the first thing I'm going to do is, in order to make this look the way eighth note swing should look, I actually would go over here to the score quantize and select 8/12. Because 8/12 will take that triplet quantization that it was played with and display it as even eighths if there's only 2 notes in a beat. And it will display it as a triplet if I play 3 notes in a beat. But it still is stepping all over this, both notationally and in sound. So I have two-step process now to get this to be 16ths. First, I'm going to select those notes and quantize them to the nearest 16th. So I could do rigid 16ths, or I could even do something subtle like 16th swing B, be a very subtle swung 16th. It looks a little different, but it sounds a lot different now, so listen to this. So I've got the sound of my 16ths back, even with a little subtle swing there. Don't know if you were able to hear that. But it still doesn't look right. So you know what I'm going to do next, right? Since I already have a piece of data right here for this automatic tuplet to have hung itself on, I'm simply going to edit the automatic tuplet. If it wasn't here, I'd go down here and get the end tuplet and drag it to that note, or use the pencil tool and put it on that note. But since it is here, I can just edit this tuplet. So I'm going to double click and say, this is going to be funny. Give me 4 notes in the space of 4/16. Hide the bracket, hide the numbers. Now it displays as 4/16, and this 4 in parenthesis won't print, remember? We saw that behavior. So now it looks right. And force it to print, okay? And just to clarify here what the situation is for later, I'm going to get the scissors tool out and cut right there. And so now I have 2 regions. I'm going to select this region and leave it at 8/12. I'm going to select this one and put it back at 16/24. So that those examples back here still make sense. And this example here makes sense. And now I'm going to go back to the 16/24 situation. By the way, what if you wanted this tuplet to begin with a rest? Well, you'd have to actually delete the note, plan a 16th rest, and then go get the end tuplet and hang that tuplet on the rest. Okay? So all those same considerations apply even in this situation. Even when you're hiding the bracket and hiding the numbers, those same considerations apply. All right. So I'm going to now get the scissors tool again, wherever it is here. There it is. And I'm going to just cut right here. And now this is a new region. And I'm going to make this region be 16/24 for its display quantization again. Which just means, of course, that it can display 16ths, eighths, and quarters, or 16th triplets, eighth triplets, and quarter triplets. That's all these 2 sets of numbers mean. Okay, so now here's a different situation, and this is one that shows up also in your piano assignment, and here we go. I'm not sure I can even execute this, but I'll give it. I'm going to come back here to my main window, and I want to change the automatic quantization, so I'm going to change it to 16ths. I missed 16ths. There we go. So I've changed it now to be 16ths, okay? And away we go. So I'm going to select this region so I can play into it. And I probably can't even execute this, but I'm going to try. I don't know how good that was or wasn't. So I'm going to take this note now and see if I can quantize it to the nearest 30-second note, which should be up here. There we go. And of course, it doesn't look any different because the display quantization just doesn't show 30-second notes. Do we see it? Now, here's an interesting thing I want you to see. If I succeeded at that, I don't know. I'm going to go here to 32 in the display quantization. Nothing changed, which means that this note was actually closer to that one, and when I quantized it to the nearest 32nd, it still put it there instead of the 32nd between this 16th and the second beat. So just in order to get this note to that last 32nd of beat 1, here's all I'm going to do. I'm just going to let you see it as I do it. You see the display of the transport here, and this is the division. So I'm just going to make the division be 32. And you could do it a couple ways. You can do it, with the mouse and the menu here. But I have another thing that I do. I just hit the slash key a couple times, and if you have my key commands, that works for you. So notice that as I hit the slash, it keeps making the division smaller and smaller. If I hit shift in the slash, it makes the division bigger and bigger. And please notice that when I hold command and hit slash, it always goes back to 16. So slash slash, and now I'm going to be able to nudge that note to the left by one increment of that division. So here we go, option command minus, and there it is. So that's what I was trying to get to appear when I went to 32, but my performance just wasn't good enough to make it happen. And now I'm going to return the division to 16. So I'm just going to do command slash. Now once you understand how that works, if you can keep track of the order, in other words, it's always a duple, a triple, oops, just a minute. It's always, looking here, a duple, a triple, a duple, a triple, a duple, a triple, and going the other way. It's a duple, this is shift slash now, a triple, a duple, still shift slashing, a triple, a duple, a triple, a duple, a triple, a duple, and so forth, okay? So if you can keep track of that order, now I'm going to do command slash, which returns it to 16. You don't have to open this window. You can just keep track in your head of where you are while you're doing it. So for example, if I decided I want to move this note 1 32nd note to the right, I could do this, slash slash option command plus command slash. And now I've got that note nudged exactly to the second beat. There's the proof. And I did it without looking at the transport because I can keep track of where I am in my process. Now I'm going to put it a 32nd to the left. So slash slash option command minus command slash. So you may have to watch this segment of the video again to follow the logic of it, but it is working. Okay, so this is great, but what if I don't want to have this display quantization? What if this display quantization shows me things I don't want to have to see over here? It's too accurate, almost, and it's showing me 30-second notes I don't want to see. I would rather just see 16ths as the level of accuracy for my performance in notation. So here's the answer. It's very simple. And what I recommend you do, just to keep your head straight about it, is just temporarily change the display quantization so that the notes all show where you want them. But now go to the end tuplet and drop it on the first note and say, show me 2 notes, I'm trying, in the space of 2 30-second notes. Hide the bracket, hide the numbers, was already checked, and zing. And then select all of it and press the letter B to beam it. And now when I go back to the 1624 display quantization, those notes are preserved because these 2 30-seconds are being forced to display that way by the tuplet. Okay, so there's that. And now we're going to do another fun little thing. I'm going to put in something called feathered beaming. So to start with, I'm going back here, click in the background, 16th notes, dandy. Okay, and away we go. Oh, I've been better, but I've been worse. Okay, so apparently these were all the 16th late, so I'm going to do Option Command minus, and there they are. Okay, so now I have 16th notes. Yes, and if I wanted to feather beam them, here's one way that I could do it, and this is going to seem really funny, but I'm going to make those all look like eighth notes. There's a reason why. So to start with, I'm going to get this end tuplet and hang it on the first note. And I'm going to say, show me 16 notes in the space of 8 eighth notes. Oops. I must have said 15. Must have said 15. Yep. Okay. Show me 16 notes in the space of 8 eighth notes. There we go. You see how that forces them all to look like eighth notes? Isn't that interesting? With a big old bracket there. And of course, I was hiding the bracket and hiding the numbers. If you didn't do that, you'd get this. Okay. But I'm going to hide the bracket and hide the numbers. Okay, so hopefully you saw the video about feathered beaming, and hopefully you saw the very short one that just describes what feathered beaming is. So the goal here is to notate something that when a player sees it makes them want to do something like this. 3, 4, dot, 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 where they start slow and get faster as the beats go on. So that's not what's going to happen with this notation. These are still just 16th notes at the end of the day. But I can get the notation to happen in a very simple way. And so here I go. I'm going to, first of all, duplicate the staff style. So duplicate. And now I'm going to the staff style itself. And I'm going to rename this for feathered. Okay. Actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to make a whole new, instead of doing this piano track kind of deal here, I'm just going to make a completely different staff style here. So I'm going to get the scissors tool here and just cut there. Thought I had the scissors tool, don't I? There we go. And we're going to make this just be treble for right now. Okay, and now I'm going to duplicate treble, duplicate the staff style. By the way, do you see these ghost staves appearing? Those are appearing because in global format, fill gaps is checked. So observe that when fill gaps is not checked, the ghost staves disappear. When fill gaps is checked, the ghost staves appear. Are we seeing that? So when you see ghost gray staves and you're wondering where'd they come from and how do I get rid of them if you're not liking them, just turn off fill gaps in the global format. Okay, so now that I have a copy of the treble staff style, I'm going to show staff styles, and I'm just going to add a couple of extra voices. So 1, 2, I just click the plus here a couple times, and one set's going to be on channel 2 and the other set's going to be on channel 3. And you know how I do when I'm doing these, I often don't make the first voice be channel 1 so that I don't lose notes. So I want to hide the extra rests from these other two voices. Seeing that? So hidden the extra rests. And now we're going to select these notes. I'm going to do Command C, which copied them all. And now Option Command V, which is paste at original position. And one more time, Option Command V for paste at original position. I now have 3 notes at each location. Do you see that I have 3 notes selected here? And I draw a box over that. So now I'm going to select all those notes and do Option V, which is voices to channels. And now if you look at that region in the event list, you'll see that the notes are just oscillating channel 1, 2, 3, channel 1, 2, 3, channel 1, 2, 3. In order to see what that really looks like, I'm going to explode polyphony. So on the view menu, explode polyphony, or you can just do Option P. And now I can see all three voices. So now here's a really funny thing to make the feathered beaming happen. I'm going to select that note and Option D 4 times. Remember, Option D lowers the end of the stem. Right, where is it? Here. So Option D moves the end of the stem down. By the way, if these were stem down notes, then I'd be doing move up the stem. But because these are stem up notes, I'm doing move down the stem end. And here we go. Option D 4 times. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to pick this one and Option D 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And now when I unexplode polyphony, I have instant feathered beaming. And when it prints, you won't be seeing those numbers in parentheses, and it's just going to look like that. Okay, so now here's the downside of that way of doing it. That way of doing it has done two things we don't, that are, let's just say, less than ideal. One of them is all of those notes are now sounding, so it's going to be really loud. Cover your ears. Are you hearing that? That's because the note is literally 3 times as loud, because the very same note is being triggered with the very same waveform. So where the amplitude was whatever it was to start with, it is now exactly 3 times what it was. There's little or no phase cancellation here. So that's a problem. So here's the solution to that problem. Option P to explode polyphony. Select all the extra notes that you just put for the graphics and make their velocity be 1. So now when you play, it's back to normal instead of sounding like super piano. All right? So that fixed that problem. But the other problem is it doesn't sound the way feathered beaming sounds. The way feathered beaming sounds, as I said, is it either starts fast and then gets slower, or it starts slow and gets faster. But since these really are just all 16th notes, I'm getting this. So it's not making the musical effect of feathered beaming in my demo. So if I want to have the effect of feathered beaming in my demo, then here's what I have to do. And away we go. I'm going to crank up some step time here. This is another of those rare occasions when I do step time. And I'm going to put in 8th notes. I'm going to put in 2 of them. And then 3 8th note triplets. And then 4 16th notes. And finally 6 16th note triplets. Okay, and those notes went in on channel 2. Do you see that? That's why we're seeing that rest show, because the rest is the voice that has automatic rests. And so I can fix that easily enough. I'm just going to select them all and do Option C, and the rest went away because now they're all on channel 1. Did we see that? Okay, so now I go to work on the tuplets, but do hear the sound now. This is the sound we want. That's the sound we want of that. It's a little bit too regular, but it sort of is a reasonable stand-in for the effect of feathered beaming. So now away we go. I'm going to double-click this tuplet and hide the bracket, hide the numbers. I'm going to put a new tuplet on this note, and I'm going to say, give me 4 notes, and this is going to seem funny. In the place of 2 8th notes, hide the bracket, hide the numbers. So they look like 8th notes because I said give me 4 in the space of 2 8ths. And I'm going to select this one and say give me 6 notes in the space of, you guessed it, 2 8th notes. Whatever value you put here in the tuplet is what determines what the beaming is. Are we seeing that? So you read this as give me this many in the space of this many of that. And I'll hide the bracket, hide the numbers. Now select the whole thing. B for beam. And now copy, paste the original position. 1, 2. Select the whole thing. Option V, explode polyphony. Take this down 4 notches. Option D, 1, 2, 3, 4. Take this down 8 notches. Option D, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Select all these notes and make their velocity be 1. And now it sounds right and looks right. Okay? And obviously you could go the other way, right? So you could start fast and go slow. So you'll hear people say, well, Logic doesn't do feathered beaming. And it is true that Logic does not have a directly supported feature designed to do feathered beaming. But if you understand how staff styles work, you can easily make it do feathered beaming. So in the second assignment that's due next Tuesday, we're going to be doing something that we'll learn how to do on Thursday called mapped instruments and mapped staff styles. And so there's quite a bit of extra credit available on that assignment if you can figure out how to do feathered beaming in that assignment. And so the big hint in that assignment, and I'll give it to you again on Thursday, is going to be that you definitely have to do it using different voices. But with mapped staff styles and mapped instruments, you have to also create separate groups in order to assign them to separate voices, separate drum groups they're called. So we'll talk about that more on Thursday. That's what's coming up. And you don't have to do the extra credit to get a good grade. I just wanted you to know that I would be giving you some help with getting that started. Okay, finally, something we haven't discussed yet is feathered beaming. So let me encourage you to compare this to that. They look the same when they print. Okay, they look the same. But this one sounds right because it was made with the variable tuplet lengths. And this one it sounds like 16/16 notes. Okay? All right. And frankly, it doesn't always matter that much how your demo sounds. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So if it doesn't, there's no reason to bother to do it this way. You can just do it this way. All right. Okay, on to cross-staff beaming. So I'm going to get the scissors tool once again and cut this region. And now we're going to, well, first of all, I'm going to assign, well, I already made a piano 1 plus 2, 3 plus 4 cross staff. So let's compare. This is piano 1 plus 2, 3 plus 4 as a staff style. And as you can see, it shows automatic rests for the upper voice in each staff. And then it has the channels and, you see the settings here for stems, ties, and tuplets. The lower voice is always down. The upper voice is automatic because we're often using only the upper voice in either staff. Now let's take a look at what cross staff poly 1 plus 2, 3 plus 4 cross staff looks like. And you can see here it simply hides all the rests, but everything else is the same. There's a reason for that, and it's especially critical that you have the upper voice left at auto for both staffs. And we're going to see why. So this is just a piano 1 plus 2, 3 plus 4 with the automatic rests turned off on all the voices. The upper voice left at auto for everything. The lower voice set it down for everything. That's what makes a good cross staff beaming setup. So now I'm going here to cross staff. All right, and I'm just going to go over here to bar 29, and I'm going to play some eighth note arpeggios here. Okay, we're good. So I have automatic quantization at sixteenths. It'll, I could almost play some sixteenths, but I'm probably not that good. So we'll see what happens here. Okay. Hey, what do you know? I did it. Applaud. I'm looking at your pictures. Applaud. Thank you. Now I feel better. You have validated me. Thank you for that. So I'm going to select all these notes. First of all, do we agree that this sort of communicates, but it's not fabulous? Um, and so I'm going to select all these notes and put them in the lower voice. So I'm sorry, not option C, just the letter C twice. That put them on channel 2. That put them on channel 3. And now the very simple situation here is I'm going to take these notes and go up here to functions, note attributes, voice staff assignment, staff above voice. How about that? And so now you can see that these notes are beamed together. And this behavior of the beam in the middle with some note stems up, going up, and some note stems down, going down, is completely mediated by the fact that you chose automatic stem direction in the source staff. In this case, the source staff is the lower staff, because recall I put all the notes on channel 3 and then moved them to the upper staff. So if this was set to up, take a look at what that just did. Are we seeing the difference there? So we want this to be automatic so that we get that. Are we good? Now, even though it's been set to be automatic, you could, I suppose, if you wanted to, select all these notes and make them be stem up that way. That was Shift D. But I don't, in this context, I don't think there's a great reason for that. You could, but it really doesn't matter in this situation. So I'm going to return those notes to their default stem direction. Okay, now let's take that very same thing and make it, oh, that was funny. I'll do that. I have to copy it first. Copy. There we go. And paste. Okay. Now I'm going to select all these notes, functions, note attributes, voice staff assignment, default staff, and they're back. And now I'm going to put them all in channel 1. So this is going to be option C. And now they're on channel 1. So they're all in the upper staff. And now I'm going to select these notes and put them only in the lower voice. And let's see what happens. Staff below voice. Okay? So as you can see, this is the default behavior if we start from the upper voice and push down. This is the default behavior if we start from the lower voice and push up. They're both clear, and you're certainly free to edit the direction of these stems manually if you want to. Very often there isn't a whole lot to choose between whether you start with the upper voice and push down or start with the lower voice and push up. It mostly is a matter of which way of doing it leaves you with the least additional editing to do. And you'll find that out quick enough in a local circumstance. But that, in a nutshell, is how you do cross-staff beaming. And this sort of thing gets to be more critical if you have something like this going on. So I'm going to take these notes, that note, and drop it an octave. And then I'm going to put it in the lower voice. So I'm going to go back now to functions, note attributes, voice staff, staff below voice. Actually, just default staff. It's just going to go back where it was. You can see that if in my thinking about how to play this, I wanted the player to play this with their left thumb, then I'm not saying that's necessarily the best way to play it. But if that's what I wanted for whatever reason, then this is much easier to read than 2/16 here followed by rests, and then a 16th on the second 16th of beat 2 followed by rests, and then 2/16 down here followed by rests. While up here I have a rest, 3/16 and a rest, and then 2/16 and then a rest, and that would be harder to read and make sense of. So this cross staff beaming thing is really helpful for arpeggiated parts where you just want to really find a simple way to clarify the rhythmic relationship between notes that are getting played kind of bouncing back and forth between the two hands. Okay? So that's cross staff beaming in a nutshell. There are some situations where it's better to start with one voice or the other, but they're local situations and you don't really tend to discover what they are until you just start. So my general habit is to start with the lower voice and then push notes up when it's this kind of broken chord thing that sort of originates in the left hand. And on the other hand, if the right hand is originating the phrase and then it's flowing down into the left hand and back up into the right hand, then my habit has generally been to start with the notes in the upper voice, the right hand, and then push some notes down to the staff below the voice. Do you see why it's helpful to us here to not have any automatic rests? So I'm going to go back now to the staff style that does have some automatic rests, and you'll see how that's kind of confusing looking. So it really is better to do cross staff beaming in a staff style most often that just doesn't have any rests. Maybe, and this is a big maybe it's okay to have rests in the voice of origin. So the voice of origin is the voice that the notes were in before you did the cross staff beaming step. So if in this staff style I was showing automatic rests in the upper voice of the lower staff, you can see that I don't have any problems here with additional rests, because from Logic's point of view, all these notes are actually in the lower staff in the upper voice. So there's no place for an automatic rest to appear. Every space is taken by a note. But over here, of course, you see that because this voice, in this case, the upper staff is the voice of origin for all these notes, we have an automatic rest appearing in the lower staff because we had automatic rests turned on in the lower staff. So my general habit, in all honesty, is when I'm going to do a little bit of cross staff beaming, I just choose one that doesn't have rests. I'm going to go back and remove the rests now. I just have no rests at all in my cross staff beaming staff style. And then should I need a rest somewhere, there's nothing to stop me from putting one in. So I'm not saying that this is a good thing to do here. We don't need one. But if I decided I want to put a quarter rest here, I certainly, let's get a quarter rest here. Quarter rest, there we go. Okay, so now I'm going to put a quarter rest here on, trying to put one on beat 3. There we go. Why is it not appearing? That's interesting. There's something going on I don't fully understand. Just a moment here while I try to sort it out. And I'm just going to select all these notes just so I can locate myself in the event list here. And there's my rest. That's the first one that was meant. I just missed. I'm going to delete that one. But this one should be displaying as a quarter rest on beat 3. And right offhand, I don't know why it's not. So this is something else I'll figure out and get back to you about later. So sorry. I don't know why that's not displaying. It should be because it's a user rest. It shouldn't be getting stopped. Oh, I know why. Duh. The reason why the user rest is being stopped there is very simple. All these notes are associated with the upper voice, remember? So the upper voice is already filled, so to speak. There were no empty holes for rests to be in. So even when I put in a user rest, it can't display because, in fact, these 4 notes are taking place during that user rest in the upper voice, even though they've been moved down to the lower staff. So in contrast, I should be able to put a rest here in the upper voice and it will a user rest that will display, because these notes are all associated with the lower voice. Is that making sense to you? With the lower staff. So let's see what happens. This is going to be a quarter rest on B3, and yes, it displays. So I'm not saying you should do that. This doesn't make any musical sense, but I'm just wanting you to see that you can place manual or user rests. Just be careful that you're placing them where the notes that are present allow them to be displayed. So if these notes are all associated with the lower voice, then I can't put that rest in the lower voice. It just won't appear. It gets wiped out by the notes. But if I put the rest in the upper voice, it does appear. And in contrast, let's go back to the event list for a moment, and I'm going to select that rest that didn't appear here, and I'm going to put it in the lower voice, and watch what's going to happen. There it is. Because these notes are all associated with the upper voice. So even though there's some notes there, these notes are not telling the lower staff anything. They're just being displayed there. So the lower staff thinks, so I can still display a quarter rest. There's no notes here. I bet you've never heard of anybody anthropomorphizing a musical staff like I just did. I just discussed what a musical staff thinks. Oh my, that's a little frightening. Okay. So that's the story, and I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. It just doesn't make any sense, but just want you to see what the options are. Okay, so basically this is it. This should have given you the preparation. I'm going to save this file. So it's in the common file stream now as week 6 class 1 examples. And you should now have enough information to be able to do this assignment. We've covered everything that's in it. The one thing we didn't cover is how to do the tempo track editing here. So if you need some help with editing the tempo track, you're welcome to ask. Let me show you what it looks like. So here we go. This is what it looks like, and I actually put a picture of this tempo track in the assignment instructions. And I put a picture of the tempo list in the assignment instructions. So you should be able to sort all that out. By the way, one thing we haven't discussed is something called humanize. And that's for 10 points of extra credit. And so let me show you that. I'm going to just select all the notes. I'm going to go back to page view. I'm going to select all the notes. Well, I think I'm going to select all the notes. There, got all the notes selected. And I'm going up here to the window menu, and I'm selecting Open MIDI Transform. And there's this thing here called Humanize. Do you see it? Look what it does. It randomly moves the position of notes by up to 10 ticks left or right. That's what plus or minus means. So it randomly moves the position of notes, and it randomly fiddles with their velocity, and it even randomly fiddles with their length. Well, these two things are worth doing if you have stepped the notes in. So if you've stepped them in, they may all have the same velocity or something, and they may have perfectly mechanically perfect lengths, and that may not be what you want. So maybe a little bit of that can help. So this is in ticks, right? But even if you've played the music in, if you quantized it, you may then want to humanize it by reducing the perfection of your quantization. And that's what is accomplished right here. So listen to how this sounds. Do you hear how those eighth note broken chords are perfectly mechanically perfect? They're just perfect. And it's just all very hyper precise, you can hear, right? So if instead we do this little game, I'm going to select only, and it's selected 132 events. I guess that's how many events I have here that are notes. And now I'm going to operate. Actually, you know what? I don't want to do it yet. I'm going to undo these two things. I'm just going to make that be through and through. And the reason for that is this wasn't stepped in, and the note lengths are pretty good, I think. So we'll just leave that alone, but we are going to randomize position a little bit. So now, select only and operate only. And look, it actually changed the notation a little bit in a couple of spots. Did you see that? And it just randomly moving some notes left or right by up to 10 ticks was enough to actually cause minor changes in the notation. So now if I select that note, it just needs to be a little bit later. So I'm going to go in the event list and find that note. It should be selected now. There it is. And I'm just going to make it a little bit later so till it pops into the tuplet again. There it goes. See it? And this note needs to be a little later so that it pops over to the downbeat in the next bar. There we go. So do you see what I just did? I'm over here. So I'm just looking at this and seeing the places where Humanize did something bad and fixing it by adjusting the notes left and right to get the notation to be right. So now listen to how it sounds. So you can hear it's not quite mechanically perfect now, and you can see that it's not. You can see the notes are almost never exactly on an even beat. Everything is numerically a little bit off. So let's compare that appearance to how this looked before I did that humanization. I'm going to just revert to saved. So look how the numbers are looking. Are you seeing them? Now I'm going to revert. And now let's look at the numbers again. Actually, I don't need to have all notes selected. I just want the regions selected. And so here we go. And now do you see that other than the triplets, everything is on a 1, 1, 1, 1, unless it's a triplet. So do you see that I've got a lot more ones, a lot more perfect precision of note placement. So that's why this version sounds slightly more mechanical. And then I have another version that I made that is called Humanized, and it's this is yet another version of Humanized, and this one will be slightly different than the one we just made because it was random in the first place, right? Humanizing is always random. So in particular, you'll notice at the end, this one has a little bit more imperfection of articulation for these last few notes. In fact, I'll just play that. And this is not something I edited, it's just something that Humanize caused to happen. Are you hearing that? And that was done by Humanize. That was not me doing anything tricky. And that was just that random note placement or position placement of plus or minus 10 ticks. Consider that 10 ticks is a 24th of a 16th note. And so this is just entering just enough imprecision so that it sounds just slightly more human when it plays. And you really hear that with 16ths, because 16ths can start sounding like machine guns when they're mechanically perfect. So you can tell that that's just a little bit better than when it's just mechanically perfect. Something else, of course, you can do to make them feel less mechanical is just do tiny tempo variances. So like 1 beat or 2 beats a minute different of tempo between this bar and that bar can be just enough to sound a little less mechanical. And trust me, when humans play, there's at least that much variance. Okay, so that's it, and you should be set up to do your assignment, the first assignment of the week. And on Thursday, we're going to do mapped instruments and mapped staff styles, and you'll have lots of questions. I hope you watch the video on mapped staff styles and mapped instruments before you come to class on Thursday. Blessings upon you. and I'll look forward to seeing you again.